Hare Krishna, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've had some wonderful mantra meditation sessions today morning. So, this is the immersion in the holy names of Krishna day conducted by Gita Reading Society here in Singapore. I just have a few quick announcements before I hand this off to Devaki Nandan Prabhu to introduce our very esteemed speaker. So during today's session, you will find that you will be muted for the duration of the session, except for the speakers. However, at the end of the session, we will unmute people. First of all, there will be a general question and answer. During the general question and answer, questions will be read from comments received either via Zoom chat, YouTube comments, or Facebook comments. And this will be read by the host, me or one of the organizers, which our esteemed speaker, His Holiness Rompal Swami Maharaj, will answer. After this general question and answer, there is Ask the Monk event, which we have pre-selected persons who have been chanting with us every day for the last 8 weeks during the Singapore circuit breaker. 10 persons who will each ask one question and a maximum of one follow-up. In that case, they will be unmuted and you will be also able to see their video. So with that, one quick tip, please, like we said in the morning with the chanting, try to receive this wisdom and the transcendental sound vibration from the sacred space of your heart as the Atma and not just cognitively. So with that, I hand it off to Devaki Nandan Prabhu to introduce our esteemed speaker. Prabhu, I am unmuting you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So, Hare Krishna to everyone and welcome to Gita Reading Society's Mantra Meditation Program entitled An Immersion. On behalf of the organizers, the Gita Reading Society, and all of you who are gathered here today, I want to take this opportunity to welcome His Holiness Romapat Swami, an esteemed speaker, a deep realized soul, classes and discourses and time spent with the devotees here have attracted so many devotees to take up the practice of devotional service. My personal time spent with Maharaj has been over the last few years, and I have always been very inspired by his erudite scholarship and more deeply by his realization of the scriptures. Maharaj is a senior disciple of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder and Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And he travels around the world discussing the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga and, just as important, the practice of Bhakti Yoga. And by speaking to us about the practice, he has left a deep impression in many devotees. He has left a very deep impression in me. And whenever I hear the lectures of Maharaj, or I've had the time to associate with him, I've had the fortune of associating with him, I've always found it so enlivening. And I've always come out of his lectures and the time that he has spent with me with deeper convictions to understand the true purpose of life. So Maharaj, we are very honored to have you today. We know you have a very tight schedule. The beauty of the COVID-19 situation is that we don't have to fly you into Singapore to actually get to hear you. And this has brought us closer to you. Thank you so much for taking time to address us today. And we look forward very much to your realizations, your practical approach to the science of devotional service, and your continued inspiration in our lives. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everybody. We're on the other side of the planet from where you are. but we're in the same moment. The mantra meditation weekend together, I guess this is an inauguration of that time spent. My understanding is that there's 3 different audiences here. There's students, as we heard. There's some members of the center, and there's some others who are from some other remote places who have joined us. So the main audience I'll be addressing is the students. But I think when we're done, whoever would like to raise some questions is welcome to do so. During my previous visit to Singapore, the university session, the Body, Mind, Spirit event or festival, we focused on mantra meditation also, specifically though, about overcoming negative emotion. Something that everybody in this world experiences is negative emotion. So moving from that position, I'd like to just move in the positive direction. There's a nice text in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna describes that lower taste for lesser things or negative emotion or whatever is unwanted in life, it can be easily let go of by a higher taste. In fact, the cookbook, the higher taste, is named after that verse. Those of you that are listening, if you have not already seen, please find out from Prakash or Devaki Nandan or whoever you can how to view the Hare Krishna movie. I'm going to make reference to a passage from the Hare Krishna movie. It's really, really well done and gives you a nice appreciation of our founder, Acharya. So many, many years ago, when Prabhupada was physically in a television studio, the lead question of the interviewer was, Swamiji, you come to the West and you have an important message. Could you share with all of us what's that message? What's the message you've come to bring to this country? And Prabhupada's answer was so simple. It was, know yourself. And the reporter said, know yourself. And Prabhupada repeated, yes, know yourself. So we're going to speak about knowing yourself through the medium of mantra meditation. And in life, it's part of the self or part of the soul is we're pleasure seeking. We want happiness. Unfortunately, we come to the material world with a misconception of what happiness is. So rather than spending lots of time describing the expectation of happiness that turns out to be other than the expectation of happiness, it turns out to be unhappiness, dukkha instead of sukha. The happiness of us, those who know themselves, is a happiness within. It's the path of yoga that teaches true happiness is not outside yourself. The senses extend out into the world of sense objects, seeking contact with a sense objects or combinations of sense objects that then spell happiness. That's misleading. It's a feature of illusion because it's abandonment of who we really are and abandonment of true happiness. Yoga, in simple terms, teaches how to discover that happiness within, the journey within, the happiness that's already existing within. That's how to know yourself. There's a nice story. Some of you who've been around for some time, you perhaps have heard the story. There's a story of a touchstone. Now, a touchstone is a very unique object. A touchstone is an object that when you take the stone and touch it to base metal, the base metal becomes gold. That's a touchstone. So the story is that there was one sadhu, a holy person in Vrindavan named Sanatana Goswami that had one. And there was another rather poor household Brahmin who had some daughters, and he had no means to have his daughters married. And he began considering, how am I going to take care of this necessity of having proper expenditure for my daughter's marriage? So then he got a bright idea. He had heard that Sanatana Goswami had a touchstone, and he knew that Sanatana Goswami was very charitable and kind to all beings because he was a holy man, a sadhu. So maybe if I go ask Sanatana Goswami for his touchstone, he'll just give it to me in charity. So he decided, no loss, let me try. So he went and appealed to Sanatana Goswami. I hear you have a touchstone. Here's my situation. Would you kindly make a generous gift to me? Just, can you give me your touchstone? And Sanatana Goswami said, sure. You can have my touchstone. It's over there in the rubbish pile. And the man sorted around and found the touchstone, and he was delighted. And he went back to his home. He had an iron pot, and he touched the touchstone to the iron pot, and it turned to gold. And he was jubilant. And he found other metal objects, and they also turned into gold. And so his need was satisfied. He could get his daughter married. Now he wasn't a poor man. He had wealth. But he was a Brahmin. He was a learned person. So he began to consider, Sanatana Goswami was keeping this touchstone in the rubbish pile. That means he must have something more valuable than this. He looked at the touchstone and he thought, let me go ask Sanatana Goswami if he has something more valuable. So he went back and thanked Sanatana Goswami profusely for the touchstone, but asked him, do you have something more valuable? And Sanatana Goswami said, sure, I have something more valuable. And the man said, can you give me that one too? And he said, sure, but just on one condition. What's that? You have to throw the touchstone into the Jamuna River. So the man looked at the touchstone. He looked at Sanatana Goswami. He looked at the touchstone. He looked at Sanatana Goswami, and he trusted him because he was a perfectly honest person. And so it wasn't easy, but he threw the touchstone away into the river. And he came back and asked Sanatana Goswami, no, I've thrown away the touchstone. Can I have that thing that's more valuable? And Sanatana Goswami gave him the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, which I just heard you've been for 8 weeks every day in a dedicated fashion engaged in this thing that is more valuable than the happiness that money can buy. And in this world, it's rare to find people that even want happiness that's beyond the happiness that money can buy. But that requires a spiritual conception of who you really are. It's the mission of our founder Acharya to give knowledge of who you really are to the world, not to a certain group of people or a certain nationality or a certain culture or language, but to the world of understanding who you really are. It's a journey towards a spiritual conception of self. I saw in the schedule that you'll be spending some time with this wonderful song, Kevalastakam. Kevala Astakam. Ashtaka means 8 verses, and Kevala is a really strong word. It means the absolute necessity of taking shelter of Krishna's holy name, because the holy name of Krishna and Krishna are non-different. Now that's something very valuable. If we're in this material world and we want a spiritual conception of who we are, it will really help if we also have a spiritual conception of what the goal is. Of once we understand who we really are, where's that going to take us? And the goal is Krishna, and the means to reach that goal is Krishna. To reach Krishna, the spiritual conception of Krishna, and that's realized through the holy name. Now, some time ago, I sent out to your group a little exercise on the ear conquers the mind, and by the ear conquering the mind, then the mind can then understand that the name and the person named are the same. Abhina tvam nama namino in the Sanskrit. Nama means name, and nami is the object named. And when it comes to the absolute nature of Krishna, the name and the person named are the same. But with our material mind and material ear and material conceptions carried in the mind, we can't understand that. And so our chanting is kind of surface or superficial, or it's not yet deep. So mantra meditation means to go more deeply into the sound of the name and the experience of the name. In our modern times, young people, your age group in particular, want an experience, not just an idea. I mean, we're prone to being taught in conceptions and ideas, but really the hankering of the soul is the experience. The spiritual experience is awakened most effectively through the name. There's an obstacle. What's that obstacle? The mind. Because the mind is still carrying so many material conceptions, and we can't get that experience because the mind is in the way. I just want to share 2 more things and see if there's some discussion. One of those things is there's some very celebrated verses by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that describe how to take up the chanting in such a way that you can go more deeply into the chanting of the holy name. And the obstacle, the mind obstacle, or our mentality conception obstacle, has 4 very simple and key elements that help. Profound humility, profound tolerance, wishing to offer respects to others, and even most difficult of all is having no expectation from others in return for offering respect to others. These 4, humility, tolerance, respect for all entities, and no expectation of respect in return. Now that's a cultivation. You cannot do those things without a spiritual conception. Say it positively. The more you have spiritualized your conception of who you really are, the more you can achieve those things. And therefore, reading Bhagavad Gita, immersing oneself in the wisdom literature like Bhagavad Gita will help to replace misconceptions with proper conceptions, replace the orientation of the heart from the temporary to the spiritual eternal self. Bhagavad Gita has that effect. And as you go along further with cultivating like that, still there's our attachment to the temporary. You will find, I'm sure you are finding. So I want to read a very sweetly written rendering of one of Lord Chaitanya's prayers called Shikshastaka. Some of you may be familiar. It's very nice, so just listen. O Lord Krishna, O son of Nanda Maharaj, I am your eternal servant, but as a result of my previous activities, I have fallen into this terrible ocean of material existence. Lust, greed, anger, envy, and all the rest are my adversaries. They are my enemies. They wait in the waters of the ocean of material existence like big fish, ready to swallow me up. Waves of my hope, waves of my anxieties toss me here and there, making my life miserable. Lashing storms of bad association add further suffering. In this condition, therefore, I see you alone as my shelter. I now and then see some small bunches of weeds floating by. These are the weeds of karma, jnana, yoga, austerities, etc. I try to catch hold of them to help me as I'm ravaged by the storms of my fate in this ocean of material existence. But has anyone ever crossed the mighty ocean of nescience by their strength? And trying to swim across this ocean, some have reached out to grab the weeds for support. But unfortunately, everything, including the person himself, sinks like dead weights. Factually, I can see that there is no hope for shelter other than your unlimited mercy. The sturdy boat of your holy name is the only means of crossing over the dangerous ocean of material existence. Soberly considering all these facts, I beg for the invincible boat of the holy name from my Guru, which he gave me by his causeless mercy, O Lord. You are the renowned protector of your devotee, those souls surrendered to your lotus feet. Therefore, please accept this homeless, destitute, this poverty-stricken person who has no wealth. Cleanse me of my faults and consider me a particle of dust at your lotus feet. And that's a very sweet description of a spiritual conception of the process of going from the temporary to the permanent, from attachment to material expectations of happiness to the spiritual realm of happiness that's already within us that we have abandoned. Moving towards a spiritual conception will help you find who you really are. as Prabhupada was speaking to this reporter, our television interview personality. The goal is to know who you really are. And who we really are not, that's illusion, that whole display of material energy that has captured so many souls, including us, in the struggle for material happiness. Slackening, letting go of our stronghold that expectation for material happiness has on us is made possible by the spiritual pursuit, the journey towards a spiritual conception of self. So I'd like to end with this, that what's really important to you? And many people are too busy trying to be successful without asking themselves what's really important, because success is important. And the standard of success is the program we bought into, the material standard of success. But there is another standard of success, a much higher, refined, and happiness-based conception of success. And that success is to know who you are. So how important is knowing who you are to you? And what does it even mean? And what is that happiness? There's this nice saying, where attention goes, energy flows. I'm sure you've all experienced, you've for 8 weeks been engaged in chanting Mahamantra, and you know what distracted mind is like. Why is the mind distracted? Because attention is on the temporary. And where attention goes, energy flows. But supposing your attention, you wanted to bring your inattention and distracted mind to an attentive mind. So how do you do that? Intention powers attention. So what's your intention? What's important to you? What's deep, deep, deep inside? What's important to you? Just like this little passage. Deep inside, I know. Deep inside, I know. There's a higher reality. This is me speaking to college kids now. I mean, when I was in college, that's how I got started on this journey. There's another reality. I'm living in this one, and I'm making the best of it. But there's another reality. There's a higher reality behind all of this. I know that. And I would assume all of you wouldn't be engaging in mantra meditation for 8 weeks successively without something of an idea that there must be. There is a higher reality. And the more you can be thoughtfully, mindfully pursuing that higher reality, that's an intention. And where intention is situated, that's where your attention will go. That's where your attention will go. Just like it said at the time of death. Perhaps you've heard this before. It is said that when someone dies or has a near-death experience, their life flashes before them like a really quick movie. And the most prominent things that are most important to them, that's where the mind gets stuck. Because what's important to you, that's where the mind goes. What's important to you? Connecting with that high reality that you know exists, or understanding who you really are, that's an intention. Life is a journey, life of self-awakening is a journey to go through where we are to where we want to go, to know who we really are. And that intention helps you focus your attention. When you're doing your mantra meditation, you're practicing becoming a yogi, where your mind is not all over the place, but the mind is where your intentions, your higher intentions of life are, at least for that period of time when you're doing your mantra meditation. And you will find by practicing that alignment of your intention with your mind and then the heart, you'll find your distracted chanting will become attentive chanting because of the strength of the intention. It's a cultivation. It doesn't happen just like something material might happen by snapping your fingers. It's not such a process. It's a gradual cultivation process. And the goal, know who you are and be connected with that higher reality. And the primary means to achieve that in this age is Harir Nama, Harir Nama, Harir Nama Eva Kevalam. Prakash was saying this verse just before this recording began or class began. It's the name, the sound vibration of the name, and connecting with the person who's named by the name, Namino. There's one, I'm going to end with this, there's one very celebrated series of verses written by Rupa Goswami, where he's reciting the glories of the holy name. And it has two parts. The first part is indicating that the name is a person. And it's Namastaka, that's the reference. Where is it? It says that the tips of the toes of the name, that means the name has feet, the name has form, and the form has feet, and the feet has toes, and the tips of the toes of the name are worshipped by the effulgence from the most exalted jewels of the Vedas, the Upanishads. So let's go back. There's jewels, and some jewels have effulgence. And amongst the effulgent jewels of the Vedas, the Upanishad, the effulgence of the jewels of the Vedas, the Upanishads, they're worshipping the tips of the toes of the name. And the second half says, great liberated souls, such as Narada and others, they also are taking shelter with all their hearts in the name. And I, Rupa Goswami, similarly take shelter of the holy name. So that's mantra meditation. And of course, those are very elevated thoughts about the process of mantra meditation. But we have to move from our present position of just beginning practitioners and gradually become elevated in consciousness towards this goal of appreciating who we are, really, and the means to reach a clear understanding of who we are, really, is this combination of Bhagavad Gita and mantra meditation. So those are some words to share on the topic. And we'll give some time now to see if there's some persons that would like to have some discussion on this or whatever you would like. So thank you for the opportunity to address with you and be with you.
Hare Krishna.
That's Prakash's voice. Are the participants now unmuted?
Maharaj, for the general Q&A session, they will send their comments via the chat facility on Zoom,
Okay, fine.
YouTube, or Facebook, and
Okay.
I will read it. And for the second part, there are 10 persons who have questions who will unmute and ask.
Okay, go ahead. I'll just listen and you lead and I'll follow.
Maharaj, first question from Padmashni Mysore. Hare Krishna, how important is intonations while we are reading shlokas from holy scriptures?
How
If
important is, what's the word?
intonations.
Intonation?
Intonation. Yes. Up and down the meter, maybe. Intonation, the rise and fall of voice and speech.
Rise and fall of your voice when speaking. So when reciting the slokas, how important is intonation? That's the question.
Yes, Maharaj, and specifically, she is saying if one is not well versed in Sanskrit, he may tend to read incorrectly. Please help.
Oh. Short. Two things. Krishna knows and the heart knows. And by practice from the heart, Krishna will help you. I mean, you can, it's not essential, the short answer. What's essential is the heart. And through time, the skill of proper pronunciation and intonation will improve. Now, some training and some education in that area, that's nice, but that's not essence. The essence is the heart, and Krishna connects with your heart.
Maharaj, can I move on to the next question?
Yeah.
So this is from Sai Mohan Prabhu. Question: during chanting, to remember Krishna's form is easy, but how to get into the mood of love for Krishna?
Well, I congratulate this devotee for being able to keep his mind absorbed in Krishna's form. And that's an elevated stage. But the form of Krishna, or the name of Krishna, or the qualities of Krishna, or the pastimes of Krishna, or anything connected with Krishna, is by nature the same as Krishna. Krishna is all attractive. So to become attracted to the all attractive is very natural. The difficulty is we're distracted. Even Krishna is all attractive because we're attached to the temporary. So love awakens in a mature stage, I would say, to this individual. Continue with the process of connecting with Krishna, however it works for you, while chanting and envisioning his form, etc. And as that purification and attraction grow, then love will also grow. Love means I want to serve the beloved. So take that mood of wishing to serve and try to connect that with your chanting, and then what flows from your chanting, your activities of life, in the mood of service to Krishna. And their love will grow through the medium of service. Next.
Maharaj, I think we don't have further general questions. I think people are perhaps thinking. So if you don't mind, I am going to invite the first asked the monk person who volunteered and wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
And we will go back to the general questions if they come up.
Fine.
Anish, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Tanvat Pranams. Thanks for the amazing lecture. Since the lecture covered about setting intentions, which gives us the attention to focus on the absolute permanent right. So in my case, uh, I've been chanting for the last 1.5 years. Uh, Still, I'm facing this issue on setting intention. At the start, my intention would be focus on the sound vibrations and develop love for Krishna. So
Good.
with this intention set, sometimes I feel I'm getting distracted. So sometimes I doubt myself whether the intention is not uh, realized within me. Is it cognitively I listened to it, or uh, how should I address on this, Maharaj, to realize the intention of what I'm saying?
Rupa Goswami teaches, you'll find a nectar of instruction. This will help you, I think. Utsahan, that's the first part, enthusiasm. So what you described, at least going in the direction of enthusiasm. But then when the enthusiasm is dependent upon Krishna reciprocating with your enthusiasm, or as I was discussing with someone just before this class began, we wait for Krishna's terms. That is, our enthusiasm, we're dependent on Krishna's mercy, and Krishna will clear the way in his own way. The obstacles will be cleared by Krishna in his own way, in his own time. And so therefore we're very patient because we're wanting our relationship with Krishna, and it may take some time, so we're very patient. But we're also very convinced because we're engaged in the purifying process that connects with Krishna. We're engaged in the bhakti process. So we're determined and convinced. Enthusiasm, patience, firm conviction. You can read about it in Nectar Devotion, but that's my response. Just follow those three. Remain enthusiastic. Don't become unenthused or discouraged or whatever. Just continue with determination, enthusiasm, because you're on the right path and Krishna will help you in his own way, in his own time. That is, let maturity come of its own accord. Maturity takes time. Maturity in bhakti takes time. And Krishna's mercy. Okay?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Ramapat Swami.
Who is this?
This is Megan.
Hey, Megan.
So my question is this, and I think this is a good question that I think everyone can kind of relate to. We know that Krishna is an infinite person, but we have to chant his name, for the rest of our lives or many lifetimes to get in contact with Krishna. Is it because he is infinite? Is there a way that he could at least give us a hello or just something to let us know that he's there, so that way we feel like we're getting a connection and we're not doing this wrong? And
Well,
a follow-up question to that is, why is faith required?
okay. Well, my guess, Megan, is you've already gotten some hints from Krishna that he's real and his love for you is palpable. Let's take a look at a simple way. Take a look at where you were, back in Boston, and what your life was like, and what your habits were, your eating habits, and your this and that and the other thing. And you've moved not only from Boston to Singapore, but spiritually you've moved. So that's some indication. Now he's not jumping up and down and waving a flag and hitting over the head with his baton or something, but it's an indication of his presence in your life and his benevolence. So he can do it some other way, but that he's doing it the way that he's doing it, and that's just fine, because he knows what's best for us, certainly better than what we know is best for us. And if you want some sign, he may hit you over the head with his baton or something. I don't know, because that's what she wants. Okay, I'll do a couple of cartwheels, and she'll then say, okay, great. But if you continue to desire for some sign, he may make some special sign like that. But otherwise, the overall picture, as far as I can see, it's already there. And why is faith important? Well, it's important because it's intrinsic to the soul. It's who we are. And supposing there's a whole chapter in Bhagavad Gita on supposing somebody doesn't have faith in Krishna, then what? Arjuna wants to know, are they going to have faith in something else? And Krishna's answer is, of course, because it's intrinsic to the soul, the faith will go according to the modes of nature. Faith in passion, goodness, ignorance, different varieties of faith, because it's of the soul. So why is it important? Because it's of the soul. It's who we are. And where do we pose that? It can be indiscriminate and just driven by the modes of nature, or we can pause, step back for a moment and say, what do I really deep inside have faith in? And then it's an exercise of purification and refinement and maturing, like Anisha's question about maturing, and where do we repose our faith? And how strong is that faith, and could be stronger, and so forth. It's a spiritual evolution of faith up to the stage of prema.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Khyati and Lavkesh are next. I'm going to unmute. Kyati, please accept here. Go
Hare
ahead.
Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
First of all, please accept our greetings in your feet. Both of us, me and Lavkesh, my husband, our question is, it is, the events that happened in Ramayana and in Mahabharata, I find it difficult that they happened in the physical appearance. So in the physical world. So does that make us a bad devotee, or we can still be the devotees of Krishna and Rama in right now?
I'm not clear what your question is. I mean, we're not bad because Krishna appeared and Rama appeared. They appeared, let's say it the other way around. Why did they appear? And two reasons. This is in Canto 1, Chapter 1. That's one of the 6 questions of the sages. Why does the Lord appear? And there's 2-part reason. One, for those who are ecstatic devotees, to just like thrill them and take them back home, back to Godhead. He appears for that reason. And the second reason is persons that aren't of that category, they're covered to attract the hearts and the minds to come to that position. It doesn't mean we're bad devotees, that Krishna does those things. He's just very merciful. He does those things because he's very merciful. And so there's these 2 terms, unmanifest and manifest, or aprakat and prakat lila. His leelas, they're eternal. They're going on whether we're seeing them or not seeing them. And when he makes them seeable, there's these 2 purposes. He appears and performs wonderful pastimes for those 2 reasons. And we are where we are. We're in the spectrum of spiritual progress. We are where we are, and it's going to impact our hearts according to where we are in that spiritual trajectory. So don't worry about, are you a good devotee, bad devotee? What you strive for is knowing who you are and connecting with who Krishna is, and continue in this lifetime moving in that direction. And closer and closer and closer you get, you'll feel more and more the connection with who you are and your relationship with Krishna. That's the project, life mission, in a nutshell. How's that? Did I address your question?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, next is Hui Hui. 1 second, I'm unmuting her. Mataji, can you please accept the unmute? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for guiding us. I have questions about one of the quality of being a Vaishnava is to be humble. And I personally struggle with balancing between being humble and expressing myself truthfully. Like I used to be someone who is very expressive. I just vocalize everything on my mind, including negative emotions. And then I went to the other end of the spectrum where I'm being too reserved and I feel like not expressing myself, and I feel like I'm being trapped inside because I'm so scared to voice out my opinion or to express my emotions to people. So I'm not sure how I can balance to come into a balance between being humble and versus expressing myself.
Let me take your question and move it to a spiritual orientation. A Vaishnava's humility starts with a spiritual conception. Anything that's real is with spiritual conception. Happiness, humility, knowledge, etc., etc. There's a modes of nature expression and there's a spiritual expression of those. So spiritual humility requires a spiritual conception. You're a very tiny, I am a very tiny fragmental spark of Krishna, meant for Krishna's happiness. That's spiritual, that's the foundation for humility. Now, as I am moving in that direction of spiritual humility, then comes not exactly balance, it's intelligence. That is, there are some cases where, not in the manner of just blah, blah, blah venting, my mind is over here, and now my mind is over there, and watch the fireworks display of my mind as it's going. So that's not the opposite of humility, it's the opposite of discrimination or intelligence. Intelligence is looking at the situation that you're in, for pleasing Krishna, what's most appropriate, and then you do that. And that's from the position of humility. You're meant for Krishna's service, tiny, tiny, tiny spiritual entity, meant for Krishna's happiness. And you're discriminating by the intelligence that Krishna gives you. What's the appropriate expression for pleasing Krishna in any given circumstance? And it may be remaining quiet. It may be becoming expressive. And that's what spiritual humility is. So what's appropriate for the circumstance will determine whether you're expressive or whether you're patient or whether you're tolerant or whatever you're going to be. So my recommendation is move to the spiritual conception of what humility is and who you are, and then you'll have an answer to your question. And until you do that, you'll have this struggle. There's a verse in Bhagavad Gita that says what I just said. Daiviyesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. Ask Prakash where the verse is. Mame viye prapadyante maya metam charantite. You can easily get on the other side of the struggle that you described by taking shelter of Krishna in a spiritual conception of who you are. And until you do that, it's a struggle.
Thank you, Maharaj. I'd like to ask a little furthermore. When we are dealing with a non-devotee, either is it friends or family, I personally find it very hard to like what you said. Think about it in the spiritual sense. I find it really challenging with mundane stuff that we're dealing with non-devotee family. So how can we go about handling um, expressing ourselves?
It depends on the person and the circumstance and your relationship, how to go about it. And the same, the response is internally be clear who you are. This is know yourself, this message from the movie. Please listen to the movie or view it, the Hare Krishna movie. When you know as you're moving more towards knowing who you are, your faculty of discernment or intelligent discrimination becomes more acute. And sometimes what's important in dealing with family members that aren't devotees is to inside be a devotee and the outside be very patient with them because they may not have appreciation of the values of you, a devotee, or any other devotee. They have a different value system that's operating their lives. And you allow them to be who they are. as you're being who you are inside. And then you have certain boundaries of things that you're just not going to do, like, let's say, compromise in your eating standards, and you're not going to speak in ways that's harsh and so forth, because that's not what devotees do. But you're going to express yourself from the inside. That is, convey the bhakti mood. This is what I do with my family members. They're not devotees. Now, I prefer being with devotees because they're my spiritual family. But with my other family, I don't try to convey or condense anything. I just try to be a nice example of a devotee. And they can appreciate that or not appreciate that. For the large, especially over time, they appreciate the quality. And I'm true to my convictions. And they like that. It's not their convictions, it's not their value system, but they honor it. And I'm honoring that theirs is different than mine. I'm not imposing mine on them. My values should be their values. I'm not doing that. So we get along quite well. And over a period of time, their appreciation of the bhakti process has grown, simply because of that quality of the exchange. It's patience. It takes some maturity to be able to live your life by such a principle. But when you do, it's going to be more transformational for your family members than if you struggle with them and your conflicting value systems. Be who you are, and know who you are, and be who you are. And that will help you address this struggle of how do I behave? And how expressive should I be? Just be who you are inside. Be content with being who you are inside. And rely on Krishna for the intelligence, how much to share and what not to share with them about what's going on inside. Prakash, how are we doing with time?
Good, Maharaj. We are on time so far. There are 6 more persons who have questions, and then we have about 6 or 7 online questions from Zoom and Facebook.
Okay, so move it along, please.
Padma, I'm unmuting you. Sorry. Please accept the unmute. Yeah. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, my humble pranams to you. Just a simple question, because I know few families who are in Krishna consciousness movement and all, but they still are unable to come out from eating meat or consuming alcohol or something like that. So, I know that this is not the way to live sattvic. So I just wanted to know your opinion on that.
Your question specifically is, how should you interact with these families that have these obstacles? That's your question?
Yeah, because some of the family members, they approached, approached me to ask you this question, because some are, they have given up eating meat or, having alcohol and all, but some, they're unable to do that in spite of telling, because they don't feel it's a wrong thing to do. So,
well, again, it depends. And the first foremost consideration is the relationship. And when the relationship is such that there's an understanding that there's respect for the essence of the entity, the soul, that is to say, the person that's interacting with the meat eating or alcohol drinking person isn't regarding with a judgmental attitude, I'm up there and you're down there, and as long as they're not, the other person on the receiving end is not feeling judged. But if there's a willingness to consider, first is the relationship, then if there's a willing to consider something else, then they can think of different ways depending upon the individual. What's it, how to help them, like health, or medical reports, or compassion, or the consequences of the descriptions of the modes of nature, depending upon the person and what their interest buttons are, then they can help feed those interests so they can come out. But if there's not really any interest to come out, then you just continue to, they can continue to invest in the relationship, not be judgmental. I've seen where it has happened like that just by wholesome association over a period of time, the person that has some bad habits can let go of the bad habits by good association, especially when they're not feeling judged. If they feel judged, there's a pushback and it goes the other direction. They just dig in their heels and I'm not budging. So there. So don't do that. My advice would be don't do that. Don't push. Don't judge. Be a good example and see where there's an opening to help the person out of compassion. Not like I'm up there and you're down there kind of thing, but out of compassion, that's not really what happiness is. And help them understand what happiness is.
Thank you, Maharaj. Yeah.
Including, the consequences to you and for the other beings that are involved in the mediating program. There's so many ways to do that, but it depends on the person, the willingness.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Prachi Mataji.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I feel blessed to be interacting with you directly, so thank you. So my question is that right to say that a true spiritual guru will only grace your life with his holy presence when your heart is full of devotion, compassion, and surrender? Also, in our quest to find our guru...
You're going to go to another question. Let's do the first one.
Okay.
The answer is, that's not the only way. Let's take the example of our founder, Acharya. He contacted so many people that didn't match the description of what you described. That precondition was not there. Nonetheless, he gave his association to them, and by his association, his spiritual potency, something happened. Not that same something happened to all persons. That's not the fact. Many persons didn't become moved, but some persons became moved. Mm-hmm. So this is a little bit like Megan's question about the role of faith. It wasn't necessarily that they were looking for a guru, but just deep inside there was some faith, and his contact stirred and awakened and strengthened and blossomed that faith in him. And it wasn't necessarily quick overnight, although in some cases it was quite dramatic. But by the purity and some intrinsic, I want to know spirit inside, may not have even been overt, but inside, I want to know, then the combination resulted in that connection.
Perfect. I think you've answered the second part, but I'll still quote it. So in our quest, sorry, go ahead, Guru Maharaj.
Yes, go ahead to the second part. I think I finished the first part.
So the second part was, you already kind of answered it, but because I've been kind of looking for a guru. I have a lot of spiritual gurus, I'm fortunate, but does free will play a role, or it's all destiny? You've mentioned it, but sometimes I feel that it's a bit difficult. You just don't know, especially when you're an introvert. You just keep reading scriptures, you keep thinking about God, interact with your spiritual siksha gurus.
You asked this question in one of your letters. Is it the same question that you asked in your letter?
It's same, but just was tweaking it a bit, that sometimes when you are an introvert, it gets a bit difficult to kind of find the spiritual guru. You can be in touch with the siksha gurus, but it's difficult to find the spiritual gurus.
Well, the concept of Shiksha Guru is guru, and the Shiksha Guru is a spiritual guru. The Shiksha Guru is a spiritual guru. When you're reading Prabhupada's books, or anyone on this call or class, when you're contacting Srila Prabhupada's books and his teachings, that's a Shiksha Guru function. Now, he's not available to give mantra, so he won't become Diksha Guru. But that's a Shiksha Guru relationship, for example. Now, it's in time remote and physically not accessible for Diksha, for receiving mantra from the Diksha Guru. But it's a Shiksha Guru relationship, and it's a spiritual Guru, Shiksha Guru. I'm just clarifying language here. But I don't know what your position is, but if you accept Srila Prabhupada as a pure spiritual guru, just not accessible for you to sit at his feet and receive personal instructions from, still, that's Shiksha Guru. His writings, accepting them, that's Shiksha Guru function. So if that's the case, stay with it. And then in course of time, as your life is made up of, you're involved in the bhakti process and you're associating with others, and the rest of what I wrote in my letters to you, my reply to your questions, the rest will flow just by Krishna's arrangement. He will, the sincere person, the saying goes like this: by the mercy of Krishna, one receives Guru. By the mercy of Guru, one receives Krishna. So it'll happen in course of time. No need to worry about it. It'll happen in course of time. Just continue with that eagerness to make that connection.
Shankar, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna. How does one know what is the right spiritual path to achieve one's goal of knowing the absolute truth?
We know anything through these three criteria: Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. And of the three, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, the emperor is Shastra. That is to say, Guru and Sadhu are subordinate to Shastra. But we know Shastra through Guru and Sadhu. Otherwise, one can just read books and not really necessarily understand them. So the right path is from Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. And so one can point out, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, it's very simple. The whole of Bhagavad Gita concludes 1866. And you can go look at your Bhagavad Gita later and confirm. Sarvadharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishami ma suchaha. So that's the conclusion of the whole Bhagavad Gita right there, 1866. Now, if you accept Bhagavad Gita and you accept Krishna as the authority of Bhagavad Gita, your question has been answered by Krishna himself.
Thank you. Thank you, Maharaj.
All of the varieties of beneficial things, dharma, duties, and processes of elevation, they're all subordinate to one thing, mamekam sharana. Bhakti process is that process. Or you could look at the last verse of chapter 6, and you'll find the answer right there. Same.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. What's happening?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Yeah, my name is Bhuvana. Yeah, so I've been in the spiritual path for a few years, and
a few years.
Yes, just a few years only. Yeah, and I have I kind of changed the way my personality has changed a bit, and I've kind of I'm trying to be nicer, kinder, more accepting of others, and also like trying to see the good things in everyone. But however, in real world, what I'm really finding is people are trying to they're looking at it as a weakness as well, like like they think that I'm a people pleaser, or I lack the competitive edge and things like that. So my question is, how do you strike a balance?
This balance question.
Yes.
Again.
Thank you.
I like the word balance, but in a different context. And this particular use of the term balance, I don't like. So please pardon me while I express why I don't like it. It's not like there's a pan scale and you got to balance something. You rather, it's intelligence. You have to be who you are. You're a devotee, and Krishna is your protector, and Krishna gives you intelligence. In a particular situation, with intelligence in service to Krishna, you'll behave this way. In a different situation, according to what's pleasing to Krishna, you'll serve in that way. And you're guided by the intelligence that Krishna gives you. So with the intention, here's this intention word again, with the intention that you want to please him. So what's your life mission anyways? Is if it's to please Krishna, which is how your life is now moving in the last few years, since your life is becoming more to please Krishna, then the decisions you make about how to conduct yourself in this, that, or the other situation will be guided by what's pleasing to Krishna. So sometimes you may have to be firm. Not for self-protection, because Krishna is your protector, but because it's appropriate for service to Krishna. And whatever is so. And you have your nature. You're going to respond to a situation different than somebody else and me and somebody else. You have to acknowledge you have a certain nature, and according to your nature, you want to offer something pleasing to Krishna. So in different situations, as you mature in your devotional life, your decision-making process is also going to modify and get more refined towards what's pleasing to Krishna, as opposed to a survival, protection or getting what I want or minimizing getting what I don't want. And the self-interested kinds of criterion for decision making will subside, and what's pleasing to Krishna will become stronger. And Krishna, when you do that, Krishna will give you intelligence, how to please him. That's the unfolding of the bhakti path. So I'm not giving you a cookie cutter answer, a balanced answer. It's a evolving of bhakti answer. Give your attention to who you really are deep inside, this know who you are statement of Prabhupada to the reporter. And that's your tiny spark meant on a spiritual basis, meant for the pleasure of Krishna. And as you evolve in that consciousness, Krishna consciousness, then you'll get the intelligence. Buddhi will follow bhakti. How to please Krishna in different circumstances. So let your attention go there. Then it's not a balance question anymore. It's a what's appropriate for Krishna service question. And you may not have the answer today, but as you mature, the answers will become more evident.
Thank you, Maharaj.
It's a different answer than a balanced answer. I hope it's okay.
Kim Mataji, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Hare Krishna everyone. Maharaj, already you have addressed my query, but I would like to use this opportunity to ask this question, which actually comes to my mind very often. I just want to know, is it possible to make each and every action we do as pure as we do chanting? I do not want to limit my experience of being connected with God only when I am in front of deities or only when I'm doing chanting. I just don't feel comfortable when I make formal relationship with Krishna. I just want to keep the relationship as I keep with my parents. When I call my mom once, she answers to me or I feel connected with her. Same with Krishna. When I say Krishna, I just want to feel connected with him. And the influence of this connection, I want to feel throughout my day. It's not that just when I'm doing chanting, I'm feeling connected with him. It's like when I'm just sitting peacefully or when I'm doing my, my daily chores, be it office work, be it my household chore. I just want to feel connected with the pure, the supreme. Is there any way, Maharaj, that I can be like this? Maybe
Yes.
I'm a bit a lazy person. I'm not disciplined. I don't get up at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock to chant mantra, or I don't do any abhishek, anything at my home. I just close my eyes and I just want to stay connected with him. So anyway, Maharaj, any suggestion?
Yeah. A maturing creeper of bhakti will take you there. But it's not going to happen overnight. Maturity doesn't happen quickly. It takes time. But when bhakti becomes matured, your whole life becomes filled with devotional thought.
So can I imagine a day, Maharaj, that in my life I will always stay connected with God, irrespective of whatever I'm doing?
Well, you're always connected with God, knowingly or unknowingly. So now we're really speaking about knowingly connected with God. So the answer about knowingly depends upon the maturity of bhakti, because that's the connection. It's service. The service to the Supreme, service to Krishna. So everything that you do is service, because that's who we are. We're servants of eternally, servants. But we're just not conscious of that. So the connection is already there. We're just not conscious of the connection. And become conscious of the connection. That's the bhakti process. Connect everything, not to chanting and deity worship only, but everything is part of your spiritual existence as Krishna's servant. So the answer to your question is yes.
Understand. Ma. Thank you.
And the bhakti process will carry you there.
Okay, Maharaj. Bless me, Maharaj. Okay. Thank you, Maharaj. Yeah.
Have a happy journey getting there.
Thank you.
Swati Mataji, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for your wonderful address. I always come across this as an issue every time I'm doing something. Like one is being content with what I have, and the other is striving for the best. Which one of these two should I be doing at any time, and what is Krishna's will in any given circumstance? Like what am I meant to do? One school of thought tells me to stay humble and be happy with everything that is going on around me, and the other is, you do your best and you strive for whatever greatest achievements that you can undertake. So please guide me on that front.
Sure. Contentment with what you have is not a spiritual conception. A material conception is complacency, and a spiritual conception is gratitude. And as far as achieving what you're capable of achieving, there's a spiritual and there's a material conception. The material conception is false ego. Kartaham iti manyate. That's the material conception. That's poison. Don't drink from that bottle. And then striving for what you can achieve, what your potential is, that is spiritual conception of that is, I want Krishna's pleasure, not I want my pleasure. The material conception is I want the satisfaction of striving and achieving. That's the material pleasure or material so-called contentment. The spiritual conception is I can always, Krishna, you're the controller. And what I'm offering to you today is my capacity, but by your mercy, may my capacity tomorrow be more than my capacity today. My experience with this particular topic is when you chant, you're asking Krishna for service. And when you ask sincerely for Krishna for service, you know what happens? He gives you more service. My experience is there's always more requirement for service than my capacity. And then something interesting happens. Krishna gives more capacity. And then the next thing happens. And then there's some more service than my capacity again. And it's always like that. But then it becomes spiritual dynamic, not the material achievement.
Right.
Striving for more, striving for better. Don't act through false ego. It's easy. We're like habituated to false ego striving. Don't become complacent and just throw that away. Spiritualize it. Krishna should be pleased. Krishna. And I'm a tiny spark, and I can't do anything unless Krishna gives me the power to do that something. So I look to Krishna like a child looking to mother with her arms raised in the air saying, Mommy, Daddy. And then they pick you up. So that's the spiritual conception. I'm dependent, and my potential is more than today. So by your kindness and empowerment, may I become a good instrument, a better instrument. Use me as you wish. That's better and more.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Lakshmi Mataji, you are unmuted.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is this. It's about sadhana. it has been my experience that whenever, so I start on the sadhana and try to increase and improve my sadhana, but whenever there's a change of schedule, like for example, if I go for a vacation or go on a conference, what happens is the entire thing gets reset, or I'm not able to do as well, and then I need to start all over again. So I was asking for any practical tips to circumvent that problem and to continue my sadhana even with a different schedule or a different setting or circumstance in front of parents, relatives, siblings, to continue my sadhana, continue my rounds as before, my readings and everything as before.
You just threw a whole handful of things in my direction. You know, the pandemic situation has helped many people become more regulated than they ever have, because the demands are just not available. But back to, you know, your question, I'll say 2 or 3 things. One is have a certain core part of what you do fixed. And with that fixed, then you have plan A and plan B, and you try to stay with plan A, but if something comes up that disturbs plan A, then you go to plan B, but the next day you're back to plan A. And both plan A and plan B have a core. Like, so let's say, I require a certain amount of rest. So I take rest at such and such time, and I get up at whatever the time allows me to get up, rested. And then there's certain things I do when I get up, and that's a core that doesn't change. You know, I brush my teeth and take a bath and put on clean clothes, and what you do that follows that, it doesn't change. So, but the timing may become plan B instead of plan A, but you very quickly, the very next day, go to plan A. So if you're at a conference, you have to have a plan B. But there's certain core elements that are in both plan A and plan B. And as the core of your life, this is a maturity statement again, but certain factors just don't change. And it's not become complacent because they don't change. You have more focus because they don't change. Now, complacency is really easy, but if you have a spiritual conception, it's a facility to be regulated. It's a mode of goodness principle. Regulation is a mode of goodness principle. So try to be regulated, plan A, and be flexible. If circumstance calls for it, demands it, then it's plan B. And then you're back to plan A, and your life is plan A with some flexibility. Then this other, difficult one is visiting relatives, because they don't have plan A. They don't have plan B. They have a different value system, many cases. So what to do in those circumstances is be respectful of their time and their space. One of the important standards that works is take rest early. Even there's social expectations because they do late night stuff, but you just take rest early. And then you get up early. And before they're up, because most persons that are not practicing sadhana bhakti, they don't get up early. So you get up early. And you do your devotional activity early, your core devotional activities early. And then they get up and, you're not going to do more because they're up and they've got their social expectations. And you just be pleasant on the inside and the outside. But you just, at least your core essential practices are there. And there's certain flexibility of social expectations, and there's certain boundaries you won't cross, like what you might eat or what you might, etc. You have certain boundaries depending upon an individual. And then they just accept because you're very polite and very nice, and don't plan extended visits with family members if they have extremely different values and they're uncompromising and relentless. Have shorter visits. Because it can be very straining in the relation, amongst family members if, she's not like us anymore and what's wrong. And, it can be hurtful of the relationship, what to speak of your Krishna consciousness. So shorter visits with those kinds of relatives. It's not an easy, this gets to like a really sensitive topic for some people, depending. So that's a more tricky one, the relatives question.
Maharaj, there are a few more questions on. So Lakshmi Mataji is saying she has a follow up. Can I unmute her?
I hope so.
Mataji, please accept. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. Prabhu, the follow-up was, so I have the plan A and plan B, everything in place before I go on any of these trips. Everything planned out before I actually go. Is it?
Well, you should have some idea. I mean, I travel all the time. I mean, with Corona, I'm not traveling so much, but hardly at all. But for someone that travels a lot, I'm speaking from experience. There's plan A and there's plan B. So and the plan B may be different in different places, and I may have an expectation what plan B is going to be like, but it doesn't necessarily work out. So there has to be some flexibility. By plan B, I don't mean it's like a rigid plan B. If it doesn't fit the circumstance, then I'm upside down. So it's not like that. You have an idea, but you're flexible when circumstances prevent you to. As much as possible, when I travel, I'm plan A all the way. There's a core set of things that I do that's really important to me to maintain and grow in Krishna consciousness. So, and people respect that. But I'm a senior citizen now. I wasn't always a senior citizen. So I had to do what people were expecting of me. So when you plan trips and things, and you get involved in conferences and whatever, it may not be a trip, it's more demanding of your time for whatever's going on. You have a flexible plan. Plan B is notional, but there's core things. And then you adjust quickly to get back to plan A the very next day when you're back into your routine or your regulation. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Maharaj. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maharaj, there are 6 questions from online. Do we have? Can I read them?
Well, we have a time cutoff, right? So if you use the time, and then when we're cut off, we're cut off.
Okay, Maharaj, we have 19 minutes. The Facebook and YouTube questions, my wife Aishwarya will read.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So there are a couple of online questions. One from Vaibhav Verma. I would like to ask you about the true spirit of renunciation, because it's something a lot of us don't understand. We think of it as just giving up things. but is there a richer side of renunciation that gives one things we can't get from the world?
Rupa Goswami addresses this question, and what you described, Rupa Goswami rejects. Prapanchakataya bodhya hari sambandha vastuna mukshimi prityago vairagyam palgo katyate. Vairagyam palgo. It's false renunciation to just give things up. That's not the true spirit of renunciation. The true spirit of renunciation is seeing all things in relation to Hari, their source, and according to suitability, one accepts those things and dedicates those things in service to Krishna. That's the true spirit of renunciation. So as you can see probably from the camera, I'm wearing sannyas attire. Someone may be, let's say, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He was a householder, he had more than one child, he had 10 children. But he was not attached. Anasaktasya vishayan yartaham upayunjitaha nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagya uchate. There's the phrase, yukta vairagya. The vairagya, the spirit of renunciation or detachment, by using all things in service to Krishna. All things. Here we are using, technology. That's material. But if you use it in Krishna's service, it spiritualizes it. And so using things in the mood of serving Krishna is the real spirit of renunciation. Then it's complete. The other is incomplete or false. It's not real renunciation. Everything belongs to Krishna. Hari sambandha vastuna. Hari sambandha. Everything has a relationship with Krishna. And accept it. It belongs to Krishna. Let me use it in his service. And if it's not suitable to use something in Krishna's service, like this earlier question about alcohol and other things, we don't use them because it has no place in Krishna's service. So that's the real spirit of renunciation. Not giving things up, but accepting that things should be used in Krishna's service. That's the true spirit. And then a householder can be very detached, involved in family affairs, involved in business, involved in livelihood, involved in home, involved in bank balance, in a mood of service to Krishna. Let it all be meant or offered in service to Krishna. That's the true spirit of renunciation.
So the next question is from Shashireka Devadasi. How can one develop love for Krishna only by focusing on sound vibration on Krishna's name? Do we need to chant with bhava, or do we cultivate bhava just by chanting?
It's the second one. You cultivate attachment to the object of the name. The person is the object of the name. You cultivate attachment to the person, and bhava arises. So start with be absorbed, strive to be absorbed in the sound of the name and connect with the person who is the sound of the name. Vacha and vachaka, the sound and the person in the sound or of the sound. Cultivate that and bhava will arise. In course, be patient.
So the next question is from Vishal Prabhu. Sometimes we know I can do better for my sadhana, for example, sleeping on time. But then 2 to 3 days, I may sleep on time but on fourth day I become tricked by my mind. How do we get resolute determination?
Purify the mind. Keep your mind cleanser going. That's the Cheto Darpanam Marjanam. Just keep staying with it. Stay with it. That your mind will gradually become cleansed. It takes effort and it takes mercy. Gradually the mind will become cleansed.
Next question from Padmashini Mysore. There are some people who drop out from college or stop working to continue their spiritual journey, abandoning their old parents and family. Though they think they are in the right path, this is hurting their loved ones mentally and financially. What is your advice to such people?
It depends on my advice is it depends on the individual. One should not act irresponsibly. On the other hand, one should not just live vicariously to fulfill the expectations of others for your life. So it takes an understanding, it takes intelligence, not exactly a fine line, it's an intelligence of what's appropriate for me in my circumstance of life. I'm thinking, in response to this question, there's one man who's not married, and he's continuing to work to take care of his mother and father. And he now has become a temple president of a large project, and he's a very capable person. And his father is now deceased, his mother is still alive, and he's looking after his mother. But he's doing full devotional service. But not as a married man. He doesn't have a wife and children. But that's him. And his spiritual master is Shaidwaita Swami, who didn't even finish high school. And became an editor for Prabhupada's books and is a brilliant scholar. So each of us are different, and what's appropriate for one may not be appropriate for another, etc. So one should take guidance. Some people don't want guidance. That's their problem. But if one accepts guidance, then one can make wise decisions that are appropriate for one's nature and the circumstance.
Maharaj, final question. This is from Divya Mataji. It's a multi-part question. How to improve quality of chanting? How to overcome anarthas? Though chanting 16 rounds, overcoming challenge of Maya Devi is too difficult at times. How to practice this? And one more question. If our spiritual endeavor fails, then is it due to our improper sadhana or karma?
She's got a seminar question. It's not, each of these are seminars. So it's hard to give a quick answer to a seminar question. But just take the last one on her list. The answer is no, or not necessarily. Let's say not necessarily. There are many factors about making progress more quickly or more slowly, or so many things like that. And if we don't achieve our goal, our bhakti goal, doesn't mean we're bad or we're slack or something like that. Krishna certainly is merciful, but Krishna, we may be quite covered living entity. Krishna can move us quickly. Krishna may test our determination and so forth. So there's so many factors involved. It's not the answer to her final question is not necessarily. And circling back to the others, to keep it simple because of the time, I would say the most important consideration is the attentiveness in chanting, because everything rests upon the chanting. That chanting of the holy name is that upon which everything else rests, the whole life of bhakti. So do that nicely and learn how to do it nicely. Her question was how to do it nicely. There's so many classes and recordings and seminars and teachings. When you have a desire, those resources are there and you connect with the resources so that you'll improve your chanting. Not that the information is lacking, in other words, it's what's lacking is our desire to do so. And strengthen the desire to improve in chanting because it's going to lift everything. And along with chanting, something that will nourish your chanting is reading Prabhupada's books regularly, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam in particular. Read them regularly, and that will strengthen your bhakti creeper, help you make wise decisions about things that come up in life, how to make wise decisions about navigating the path of knowing who you really are. I think we can call it a day, right? You're going to move on to some other parts of your schedule.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much for your time. It is said, I have heard you say, gratitude is the seed of all love. So I invite all the participants from our heart to thank Maharaj for his time and kindness to us. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So following will be in 7 minutes. His Grace Devaki Nandan Prabhu will do his wonderful kirtan. We will set up the live stream for that in the next 6 minutes or so. So please join us for that and continue to immerse yourself in the holy names of Krishna. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Devaki Nandan Prabhu, unmute. Yes. Prabhu, I'll highlight your video and give me 4 or 5 minutes to set up the live stream to the GRS Facebook.
Sure, Prabhu.